Recently, you must have heard in the news that Chinese fighter jets are intercepting Australian and Canadian aircraft. Actually, all of this is happening since December Christmas last year. But now we are hearing about them a lot for the past couple of weeks. Let's find out what is the reason behind it. If you look at this world map, China is here, Australia and Canada are here. Isn't that strange why the Chinese fighter jets are intercepting Australian and Canadian aircraft? I'll tell you what's going on. Australian planes are doing their routine surveillance in the South China Sea. That means the Chinese fighter jets are intercepting the Australian aircraft near the South China Sea. On the other hand, Canadian aircraft are doing surveillance on North Korea. As you may know, there are many international sanctions by United Nations, and most of them are imposed by the United States. So there are many sanctions against North Korea over its missile and nuclear weapon tests since 2006. And sanctions are only good if somebody monitors them. And why do the Western countries monitor? Because they want to restrict any kind of foreign trade that can potentially occur with North Korea. So basically every now and then, US and Canadian jets fly near the Korean Peninsula, just to monitor the trade routes that are around the Korean Peninsula to ensure that no illegal foreign trades are happening with North Korea. As you may know, the US Air Force in Japan operates from 3 bases. And then US Air Force also has a base in South Korea, which is called Osan Air Base near Yellow Sea. So what happens is that US and Canadian Air Force pilots, as well as their navies, go on routine surveillance missions in the Yellow Sea, East China Sea and Sea of Japan. If you notice, any kind of sea trade that has to happen with North Korea, it will happen only from these 3 routes. From the Sea of Japan, North Korea connects to Russia's Vladivostok. From the Yellow Sea, North Korea connects to Shanghai and Beijing. And they can also navigate further in the East China Sea with the help of China. What the United States and Canadian Navy as well as Air Force do is, they conduct their surveillance missions in the open international airspace and international waters. So what is international waters? If your ship or any kind of vessel is in waters that are more than 12 nautical miles or 22 kilometers away from the coast of a country, that is considered high seas and international waters. But then there is something called the exclusive economic zone. Basically, if a country wants to explore natural resources, both living as well as non-living in these waters, such as fish, mineral, oil and gas, then the limit that is set is 200 nautical miles or 230 km from the coastline. So you see, anything more than 12 nautical miles from the coast of a country is considered international waters as well as international airspace. That means if the United States wants to do surveillance in the international waters, then it will also enter the area of a country's exclusive economic zone. Now within the 200 nautical mile limit of any country's coastline, you will naturally find many different kinds of civilian vessels of that particular country doing exploration, fishing and whatnot. So when the United States and Canadian Air Force and Navy conduct their surveillance mission in the so-called international waters of the Korean Peninsula, the Chinese Navy as well as the Air Force intercept them and shoo them away, which is very much legal. They have the right to do that. Do you know something if you do the opposite? For example, if you go near to the 200 nautical miles limit of the US and Canadian coast or any other Western country's coast, they will also immediately intercept and shoo you away. Because as controversial as it may sound, the Western countries do not follow the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea when it comes to their own coastline, but they make sure that other countries strictly follow it. So China is the only country that directly challenges Western countries. In fact, China is also the only country that dares to put sanctions on the United States and other Western countries. So this kind of tussle keeps happening between 2 superpowers. Whenever United States, Canada or Japan tries to conduct any kind of surveillance mission near the Korean Peninsula, whether it is through air or sea, China responds by saying, in the name of monitoring UN sanctions, these Western countries are carrying out military surveillance in the seas and airspace of other countries. So if you see, even China has a legitimate concern. And then there is another counter argument to China's concern. If you see any country's national airspace, it ends at 12 nautical miles. So if the Western countries are flying their jets outside the 12 nautical mile limit, that is totally legal because it comes under the international airspace. Now here's the problem. Suppose your country has some islands or archipelago which are several kilometers away from your national coastline. Then your country's airspace limit starts from those archipelagos and islands coastline. This way, if you see, your national airspace limit will increase furthermore into the sea. Why do you think China rejects the Western countries' narrative on Taiwan? Because Taiwan is officially part of China. And if you see geographically, Taiwan is an island that is some 200 kilometers away from the main Chinese coastline. Because Taiwan is an island of the Republic of China, the national airspace of China extends more into the East China Sea. In fact, that covers most of the East China Sea. And this narrative of China is something that the West has rejected. So this is the issue near the Korean Peninsula. Likewise, if you go to the South China Sea, here there are three countries, Vietnam, the Philippines and Brunei. They are fighting for their maritime rights in the South China Sea. And as you know, China rejects it. So even in the South China Sea, there is the issue of what and how much constitutes the international waters. As you know, there are many islands and archipelagos in the South China Sea. So it becomes very difficult and there is a lack of consistency in defining what and how much of the area constitutes the international waters. And furthermore, if you see, China does not like the Western countries' involvement in the Asian region. Whether it is defining the international airspace or international waters, China strongly believes that in the name of upholding United Nations sanctions and law, the Western countries are doing military surveillance, which is a direct threat to China's national interests. On May 26th, Chinese J-16 fighter planes intercepted an Australian aircraft in the South China Sea region. If you look at the Australian aircraft, it is the P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft. I want you to read about the capabilities of this Poseidon aircraft. So anyhow, what the Chinese fighter jets did was they flew close to the Australian aircraft and they released flares. The Australian government has also accused China of firing military-grade lasers on their aircraft. These military-grade laser beams are also known as dazzlers. They create a powerful beam of light that can travel enormous distances and can be used to temporarily blind pilots by illuminating the aircraft cockpits. So anyhow, these kind of accusations are being heard from both sides, but I have explained the main reasons behind why the Chinese jets are intercepting the US, Canadian and Australian planes. I hope you found this video informative. Thank you for watching it.